Hello, everyone, and welcome to SOLIDWORKS Delivery Day for 2026 FD02. My name is Sean O'Neill, joined by Jesse Sprague here. Jesse, it's our second episode of SOLIDWORKS Delivery Day for 2026, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
FD02, pretty excited about it.
Yes. So if you're new to the show, welcome, first of all, but wanted to explain a little bit about Delivery Day. So Delivery Day is a series that chronicles each functional delivery throughout the calendar year, throughout the major release of SOLIDWORKS that we are on. So of course it is 2026 season. Many of you may have joined us for the general availability, the big launch of SOLIDWORKS 2026, where we showcase many of the new enhancements across parts, assemblies, drawings, user experience, simulation, and so on. Once again, back in the fall. And just about 6-7 weeks ago, we had our episode of Delivery Day, the first episode of Delivery Day for 2026 for FD01. Big package of new enhancements. And during this series, we showcase our favorite enhancements from the latest functional delivery. And FD02 actually just came out, right?
It did, yeah. Yeah, we try to time these so that you can kind of take advantage of things right away. Like one of the things that I always struggle with what's new content in general is it's usually coming out way in advance, right? And that's the case for a lot of people too. So having these, right around the time that everything is available, you can go test it. That always helps me just log things in my memory. As soon as I hear something that I want to try, I can go try it and not have to remember 2 months later, what was that thing that I wanted to try? And then try to find my notes.
And a lot of you might be familiar with service packs. Service packs didn't go away. We've just renamed them because we are doing bug fixes. We're still doing bug fixes in each incremental release. And we are still doing performance fixes, performance boosts in each incremental release. But we are also adding new features, new enhancements to some tools that maybe you haven't used. And that's why you watch the show. But also, and I think that really hits on FD02 here, some tools that you use already. And we're making them better in some ways that you may have been asking for years. And that kind of brings us, I think, to our first point as we get into our 3 sections for today. So section 1 will be on the topic of AI and assistant level functionality, which a lot of you are asking about, of course. Section 2 will be in terms of core SOLIDWORKS design functionality, think your parts, assemblies, and drawings. And then section 3 will be more of a multi-user variety, where if you are, in a single user environment, you have one seat of SOLIDWORKS, it's just you can still take advantage of these features just fine, but they are maybe more catered to a multi-user approach where you have a colleague that you're using SOLIDWORKS Design with, or maybe you're sharing your files externally. So we have some good stuff there. But 3 big themes for me tend to pop out in terms of FD02, Jesse. So one is the sort of big idea, especially as we get into AI and assistance within this first section, as you'll see. We have about 11 unique enhancements to get through altogether in FD02, although there are many more that you'll see inside the What's New doc. But the big idea is that SOLIDWORKS is starting to think with you in a lot of ways. I think you'll see that in terms of the virtual companion functionality, which we debuted majorly in the FD01 episode. But you'll see that SOLIDWORKS at a prompt level, we have virtual companions now in the task pane. And you can ask it questions, give it queries. And instead of just being, standard generative AI where it's giving you something, it's helping you to think through your next steps. That's a little bit of a preview of what we're going to get into today. As well as some areas where the software is raising its hand as you use the software, saying, hey, did you think about doing this? as you're, as we talked about in FD01, as you're thinking about patterning or doing mates, right, with the pattern assistant. In this way, you'll see that it now does it in a performance sense, specifically within assemblies. So very excited to see those. And then once again, small features, big usability gains. That's another theme that I think you'll see popping up, particularly within drawings and then some other areas within assemblies. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm excited to see how we're applying AI. Everybody, every company applies it differently.
I know you just hear AI, generative AI, right? All the time.
Yeah, it's just a running stream of that essentially. But I do, to your point of not necessarily even using it for generative stuff, I do really like the point that you made about SOLIDWORKS thinking along with you, because that's personally what I find AI is the best at for me, is taking some information, getting me to the right spot quickly. So to have something that is a point tool, in our case, that knows our system the best and gets you to the information quickly is super valuable in a day-to-day scenario. So yeah, I'm excited to check out some of those with you too.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's get into section 1 with AI and assistant level functionality inside of SOLIDWORKS Design.
Let's do it. Should I kick us off with a solid spot here, Sean?
Yeah. So, but let me explain. Okay. Solid spots. What are solid spots?
I had a feeling you were going to interrupt me. That's why I stopped.
Solid spots. This is not just this is a video podcast, and a lot of podcasts are on Spotify. This podcast is on Spotify. But if you're listening on Spotify, while you're doing some work, maybe inside of SOLIDWORKS Design at your desk, or maybe you're on the commute, right? You're on the drive to or from work. You might be listening on Spotify. So we have these solid spots at the very top, just in case you're only listening, to give you an idea of exactly what you would be seeing if you're watching on YouTube. So you can always go back and check out a piece of functionality if you're like, yeah, I got to see how that works, because we have demos for each and every one of the new features or new enhancements that we're going to catalog today. So for this first one, Jesse, hit us with the solid spot.
Yeah, exactly right. Solid spot is your cue to tune in. So thinking of making a design change to an open 3D model? Well, now inside of SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 as of FD02, you can ask your AI-based virtual companion to provide a thorough rundown of what else might need to change and why.
So we debuted virtual companions majorly, as I mentioned earlier, inside of FD01, the FD01 episode of SOLIDWORKS Delivery Day, which
we did.
Many of you tuned into. I think it was the most attended episode of Delivery Day ever. So thank you for those of you who watched in the moment live, and those of you who rewatched later on. But it's clearly, as we've joked and we said seriously, it's a major area of interest, right? AI itself. And so a lot of the AI functionality that isn't just embedded AI, right? For example, in areas like, silhouette defeaturing and other areas of SOLIDWORKS where AI is functioning in the background, even things like the fillet assistant, right? Interest, right? AI itself. And so a lot of the AI functionality that isn't just embedded AI, right? For example, in areas like, silhouette defeaturing and other areas of SOLIDWORKS where AI is functioning in the background, even things like the fillet assistant, right? But you may not be knowingly directly interacting with AI. A lot of the implementations that we've had so far are within this virtual companion context that you're likely seeing on your screen now, where essentially you are engaging with a virtual companion and giving it prompts or asking it questions that it's then helping with. Or you're, in the case of, for example, in FD01, you're trying out functionality where it's aiming to generate a drawing for you or give you an assembly structure that you could then work with and then populate.
Yeah, and currently this is a little maybe less open-ended than a standard chat, right? With normal AI tools, LLMs or whatever that you're chatting with, it's just sort of like the Wild West. You go in there and try to see what it can do. We have a little bit more of a guided setup for that, at least as of right now, while everyone is getting comfortable with what the skills are and what it can really do. So I do like how they've sort of organized things a little bit. Like, this is what this section is geared to do for you. This is what I can help you with, which is great, as obviously AI is still in its infancy at this point. So it's nice to have a guide of what can I even do with this thing. Click this button and give this a try.
This is also a fairly unique area of the software. Like right now, this is, and we'll get into this specific skill, as we might call it here. design change impact with AI, and you're assessing design change impact. We'll talk through this entire skill in just a moment, but this is just an example. You probably saw in the demo a very long list. We are adding to this list at a crazy pace. Like we're adding skills, and this isn't, for example, this entire list, this SOLIDWORKS Labs tab inside of the task pane. This is, as it says here, this is at a beta level. We are not waiting, once per year to just give you a bunch of new skills as soon as we know that it's ready. No, we are developing within R&D. We are developing these skills, getting them out to you pretty much as quickly as possible across these FDs. We're refining them on a rolling basis. And we're also giving you the opportunity to not only try these, but give feedback. So within these messages, you can access the prompts and then also give feedback in terms of the prompts responses or the virtual companion responses to you. But we're not waiting, right? We're not waiting till they're like picture perfect. We're thinking, hey, this skill A might be relevant to you in your work, and B, you might want to try it. So in this labs area, this area where we're tinkering, right? We're readily in the lab. We're developing skills. We're releasing them to you. We're basically inviting you to try something that we think might be useful to you and might be something that you want to explore. Right, that's the spirit of it.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking to Noah, our colleague, last night, and he was saying, was it Scott Byrne had a way of describing that as, these features coming out. A lot of times in the past, you think of a feature comes out, it's the finish line for that, right? It's complete, and here we're delivering. Where AI is a little bit backwards in the sense that when it comes out, it's the starting line for that feature. It's just how it's beginning. So, good to know that they're in beta, and definitely we encourage you to, if you're interested in it particularly, go in and try them out and let us know what your experience is with, because getting that feedback is important, whether the feature is useful and also what your experience is with it, using it and how it actually goes. So we definitely welcome the feedback there.
So we have two sort of general sections right now as it stands in FD02. We have mechanical designer and then sort of these evaluation tools or evaluation skills, right? We should say. But within the design change impact area, essentially what you're doing is you are asking about a potential change, the potential design change that you're going to be making to the assembly that is in view, right? So for example, you might be saying, hey, if I increase the width or the diameter of this pin, what will happen to this sub-assembly, or what will happen to the rest of the components in this overall assembly? And then what the virtual companion here is doing is it's giving you a rundown across several different criteria that you might be interested in based on your prompt, right? So in essence, it's giving you an idea of the impact of your potential changes before you make the changes, which I think is pretty useful.
It's pretty cool, and I think it's an interesting application because I don't know how else you would do this other than with AI, right? We've tried to introduce things in the past that I think are really helpful. Like you've got your dynamic arrows for referencing and things like that in the tree, where you can go in and kind of see what's related to something else. But really, when you're building a model of any kind of complexity, especially when you get into assemblies and things like that, tracking all of your references and figuring out what's related to what at a part level and also at an assembly level, it gets to be a pretty tangled web sometimes if you have things set up in a way that they reference something else. So it's cool to have a system that's trying to think that through for you. Or like I said, a lot of times with AI, I'm just looking for something that can get me to an answer quickly, right? Find a root cause quickly, and AI is very good at sorting through a bunch of information and giving me somewhere to look, right? So if I can have somewhere to look that I can go investigate that area, that saves me a bunch of time of trying to manually sort through and look for it myself.
So particularly if you aren't watching the demo right now, let's say if you're listening on Spotify, I think it might be useful just to go through the sort of almost templated response that it will provide to you. So it's pretty predictable in the sense that it will show you, it'll go through based on the scope that you specified. If I'm interested in seeing the impact across this sub-assembly or the entire scope of the assembly, even if you wanted to do that, it will list out the part names, the descriptions, whether it believes a related component will be impacted. Sometimes it'll even give you, instead of saying yes or no, whether a component will be impacted, it'll give you the sort of observed extent of the impact. It might say possibly or, minimally, right? So it'll give you some sense of that, as well as how or why it believes that the said component will be impacted. So for example, there are current mate constraints that are applied. It'll tell you the mate that is applied there and that it might be, impacted, for example, by the change that you've specified. And then also, it's giving you an idea of what it observes relationally. Like, once again, if you're, changing a pin diameter, that you might need to shift something in size. So not just talking about the make constraints that might be impacted, but that you might need to, depending on whether you're changing like a fillet radius or the length of a component, that you might need to change, something else in terms of its size.
Yeah, yeah. Just last night, I was flipping on my phone on Instagram, and I saw a reel pop up of a pretty complex, mechanism in SolidWorks, and it was just a screen recording of moving one component and something else is moving when it's not supposed to be moving, right? We've all had that happen. Yeah. You get a parallel in there or something. It's like you start moving something else, and it's driving something that was totally unexpected. And the end of the reel, it never resolved what the actual problem is. But I was thinking, you know what? Perfect application for this. What happened here, right? Like, what something is dependent on something else that I didn't intend to do. I put it in accidentally. What happened here is a great use case for this. And again, sorting through complex amounts. Sometimes I try to go back and think, okay, what would I have done without the tool, right? And a lot of times, what I would do is I make the change, blow up the model, knowing something's going to blow up, see what blows up, and then say, okay, do I have time?
Kind of go in reverse.
Do I have time to tackle, this design change right now, or do I need to schedule time for this tomorrow, right? Where this is kind of going the other way and saying, what happens if I do this? Can I plan ahead, and is how much of a challenge is this going to be design-wise to make this change? And maybe you get a pretty good answer right up front, and you can plan your time accordingly, depending on the setup. And again, a lot of times you're working with models that are not yours, so it's like, what kind of a mess did I inherit?
That's very true.
Is sometimes the question, because you're working with stuff that is not your own, and sometimes you can be smart about setting things up in a way that what the changes might be in the future. But not everybody is so clever about setting things up as they model, or they can be more careless. So sometimes you don't know what you're walking into, and I foresee this being a pretty cool way to try to get a quick gauge of what it is you're working with before you even start.
Yeah, and that's a good point when you mention a quick gauge. So there are a lot of ways to go through the feedback. So I mentioned earlier, right? It goes through part name description, kind of line by line by line in terms of the established scope that you've established, right, via your prompt. But it also gives you an idea of a summary. So you have like a summary statement at the very end, essentially describing what it sees as the potential impact of the changes holistically. And then what it'll also do is it'll give you some recommendations, some sort of summary level recommendations. So for example, if it sees an area where you might want to run a stress analysis, it might advise you there. Where you might want to change mates, once again, it'll advise you there in that sort of recommendations headered section. It also will, for example, give you a sort of nudge to potentially update your documentation. Like if you have drawings of the assembly in question, that you might need to update those based on the intended changes. So once again, give it a shot. I mean, like at the very least, like it is a useful companion. Like you said, Jesse, even in a case where, for example, you're thinking about, hey, I might need to, allot some time here. There might be a lot of different changes I might need to make downstream because of this intended change. Maybe the model is yours and you haven't worked on it in a while.
Yep.
Maybe you're working on it with someone else and you're just not exactly sure how it's set up. So this could give you good insights, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's cool. And again, the mindset of working with any of these companion tools is just kind of like chatting with your intelligent coworker, right? Who might know some bits of information about your process, and in this case is scanning actual model items, which is even cooler.
Cool. All right, so let's move on to the next one here.
Let's do it.
Labeled AI-based Fastener simplification. So I'm excited to read the solid spot for this one, because there actually was a comment on the last episode of SOLIDWORKS Delivery Day that asked about this very specific level of functionality.
Yep.
And it's one of those moments I'm sure we all have in our work where you're like, this is like a planted comment, and it has to be. And to my knowledge, it was not.
Yep.
So I'm excited to get into this with you guys. But let's hear the solid spot overview. 3D model threads, they look awesome, but they aren't the best for performance. New inside SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 FD02, a performance assistant will appear when inserting SOLIDWORKS modeled fasteners with 3D model threads, offering to A, educate you on performance impacts, and B, suppress the threads altogether. All right, this was asked for like this, and this is a common problem. I know I've had plenty of conversations about this very topic, 3D model threads and their performance impacts. And I mentioned at the very top this sort of theme that's occurring to me, or occurred to me as I looked over the enhancements of FD02, which is that SOLIDWORKS is raising its hands with these various assistants. These they manifest as these purple boxes that pop up, and they're very contextual in the sense that they will pop up as you go to perform a particular operation inside of SOLIDWORKS. So, for example, in FD01, we talked about how if you are establishing mates via copy with mates, quick mates, smart mates, however you're establishing mates, that could benefit from a pattern-driven approach, that there is a pattern assistant that raises its hand and says, hey, do you know you can make a pattern-driven component pattern out of this functionality? Well, this is pretty similar in the sense that if you're adding a SOLIDWORKS modeled fastener inside of your assemblies with 3D model threads, you have the profile, the cut sweep that goes all the way around, maybe the chamfer at the end of the bolt, that kind of thing. It will identify it, not only identify it, but ask you yes or no, do you want us to go in and suppress the threads? Which is really helpful for performance,
helpful.
right?
Yep.
You figure, you might be thinking like, I've had the conversation, a little bolt with, 3D model threads, well, that amounts to many, many, many graphics triangles. And then you figure you probably don't have one bolt inside the assembly. So it can be pretty taxing on performance.
And you've got, pretty heavy features to begin with, right? You've got a helical sweep and things like that are in and of themselves pretty intense in terms of rebuild time and things like that. No, I love this. And I particularly like what you just said, that you can, just enact the features right from these assistants. Just say, yep, I do want to do that.
Yes, please suppress.
It will go right ahead and do that for you. In this in particular is one, as a rendering guy, I always try to build in as much detail as humanly possible into the model, knowing full well that that's not going to go real great if I have a large assembly. So I'm always doing things like that. I go in, make another, configuration of it, suppress all of the stuff that I don't need, and then I can turn it back on when I do need it, just for performance reasons. But this isn't another perfect case where a lot of users might not even know about that, right? I talk to a lot of people who will just model in every little bit of detail that they can and leave that at the top level and think, I wonder why my performance is getting slower and slower and slower. It's not something that, unless you're familiar with CAD systems, you would just obviously come to that conclusion that you should be simplifying things. So it is nice in the sense that the software will tell you or remind you for those cases where people might not know that is actually a huge benefit, right? It's going to speed you up in your day-to-day working, and there's really no reason not to do it. In this case, it's literally one click. But even in the manual sense, it is pretty quick to make a configuration and store that for, when you store the detail for when you need it. But yeah, very cool that the software is now predicting these areas that may be lesser known, or maybe scenarios where you wouldn't realize that something would be beneficial, and it says, here, I'll just do it for you.
I think you mentioned a lot of helpful information, particularly to someone who might be getting into SOLIDWORKS for the first time or using SOLIDWORKS Design for the first time. So we talked about how model threads can be detrimental to performance. I think that's probably a helpful tidbit, but also the idea of configurations.
Yeah.
So when we use the term suppress, we are essentially saying that in a given configuration of a model that you're turning them off. So you can always turn them back on.
Exactly.
Basically, just highlight the features, right click or just wait for the icons to show up in the shortcut menu and say unsuppress. It's like a toggle.
Yep.
And then you can have different configurations assigned to where, hey, in certain configurations, this hole is suppressed. In other configurations in the same file, the holes are unsuppressed. So essentially, that's what it's doing. It's turning them off. It's not deleting any of the data. It's just turning the data off in that configuration. So it's unloading it in a way.
Unloading it, yeah. And that's the nice thing, other than just like hiding things, it's actually taking that out of the model.
So it doesn't have to solve the geometry either.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, to be clear, this doesn't actually make a configuration for you, right? I don't think this does it. It will just suppress it. But it's easy enough once you're in there, you can see the features are there, that they're just suppressed. If you did want to use a configuration system, you just go add another configuration and assign those. So it is it's a nice way to do it. That's what I typically do. Maybe our FD03 will be saying, hey, now it adds a configuration for you. I don't know, but yeah, it's a cool system, and I like that it's finding areas that you might not be aware. I mean, this was definitely me when I started in SOLIDWORKS. I would model everything down to the tiniest little scratch in the surface.
It just looks cool to have the threads
so
in there.
Cool. Yeah, and there are certainly cases where you would want it. Like I said, in rendering, it's great to have, and sometimes it is nice to have the detail. So suppression is the way to go for sure.
Yeah, and a helpful middle ground, which many of you might know, a helpful middle ground is to have cosmetic threads. So there you can have in SOLIDWORKS, in fact, if you're using SOLIDWORKS Toolbox, which comes with SOLIDWORKS Design Professional and SOLIDWORKS Design Premium, SOLIDWORKS Design Ultimate as well, you can use a built-in toolbox database full of a ton of different types of fasteners, and you can show cosmetic threads there, which essentially is like a decal.
Yeah.
It's just an appearance.
Yeah.
They look like, it looks like threads, but they're not 3D modeled in. The software doesn't have to solve for them. So that is there. Some of you might be wondering as well, so like a lot of times when you might be downloading fasteners from an online catalog, and they were modeled in SOLIDWORKS, they have the threads in there. So this feature will suppress in those cases. You might be wondering, what about cases where the fasteners are not SOLIDWORKS modeled, but they do have threads? Well, this performance assistant will also look for those as well. So what I believe it does is it will look to see inside of the thumbnail. Let's say you've imported, let's just say a Parasolid file or a step file. You've imported it into SOLIDWORKS. It comes in as a SOLIDWORKS part, but there is no real functional feature tree. It's just an imported body. What it will do is I believe it'll look at the thumbnail of the part file, the now SOLIDWORKS part file, although it's not really a SOLIDWORKS model part file. It'll look for the threads. It'll analyze the geometry. And then it has nothing to suppress, but it still will look to pop up in those cases. I'm not saying it'll 100% be perfect at that, but it'll still pop up and say, hey, it seems like you have modeled threads inside of this part. It won't be able to suppress anything, but it will ask you if you would like to open the file so that you can make geometric modifications yourself, which I think is pretty cool. This is a feature I could see being enhanced over time, but still, for a lot of the cases where you have these model threads, it not only educates you on a lot of things we just said here on delivery day, but it will also offer to do some of the work for you.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned cosmetic threads. I think the intent is for it to add those in for you as well. Maybe it's already doing that, or it will do that in the future. I'm not totally sure, but I think I've at least heard that those are going to be paired together, and as it does that suppression, it will also just put a cosmetic thread in there for you and do that swap for you as well.
Very cool. This is a big impact one. Very small components, but big impact.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's get to the next enhancement inside of this AI and assistance section of Delivery Day.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Always On Performance Assistant. So the solid spot for this is, do you want SOLIDWORKS to tell you when it spots a fixable performance issue within your assembly? If so, SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 FD02 might be your favorite release yet, featuring the new Performance Assistant. I like the sound of that already.
Yeah. So when we talk about the software raising its hand more often as you go about different workflows, I think this is one of the most pervasive ways yet. So you'll see contextually these performance aids, they're showing up as these purple boxes. So you're going to, over time, as we add these helpful aids into the software, you're going to become more and more familiar with seeing them and understanding why they show up, right? They're there to raise their hand to help you in certain cases where you may not have come across a certain situation, or you could be assisted via a different approach or a different way of, for example, constructing your assemblies. So performance evaluation has been in the software for years.
Yes.
In the Evaluate tab in assemblies, you can use performance evaluation it's almost like a dashboard that gives you a quick snapshot of various areas of your assembly's health. It's also just secondhand. It just gives you a good idea of what makes a healthy seeming assembly, right? Like which criteria does it want to report on? So you sort of jot down mentally, hey, this matters, right? So this improvement is essentially just contextually giving you an idea of areas where, if you were to look inside a performance evaluation, the sort of dashboard interface, where you could stand to make improvements within your assemblies, which I think is pretty helpful.
Yeah, it is for sure, and it's another one of those cases where we hit this pretty in depth in the previous one, but where it's looking for things that you, even as a seasoned user, maybe just might not be thinking about, right? You're just working away, and I'm certainly guilty of this myself. You're just working away on something in particular, just kind of putting all the pieces together, and you're not really thinking about the fact that, I haven't even noticed this is bogging me down, and then it pops up and says, oh, you could, speed this up. And it's like, oh yeah, of course I could. But again, if it's not something that you were even familiar with in the first place, now you are. So like it's great for everybody in that sense. I wouldn't even turn them off because I've been enjoying seeing them pop up and just reminding myself even of things that you can do to improve your workflow on a day-to-day basis.
So some of the pop-ups, if you're not watching along, that you might see, like the first one you see in the demo is that mate solve is slow. What prompts that in this case is the track wheels with the chain linkages inside. What the user did in this case is they made the wheels flexible sub-assemblies. So if you've been using SOLIDWORKS Design for a while, you might know that in essence, when you add assemblies into a top-level assembly, the mates are rigid, which is to say they're basically kind of fixed. If you make the subassembly flexible, like you toggle it from rigid, its natural state, as a subassembly to a flexible subassembly, you are, in essence, bringing those mates into the top-level context to solve. In this case, you figure these track wheels with the chain linkages. It's a lot of mates that you're bringing in for them to be able to solve. And so the software is saying right away, possibly even before you or anyone else notices it, mate solve is probably going to seem slow because you have a lot of mates that are solving at the top level.
Yep.
And it invites you to select the button to go into performance evaluation and check in more, but also via the assistant will show you areas via its own little dashboard within, let's say, flexible sub-assemblies or whatever, where there are a lot of mate solving within a given component. And then you can go ahead and say, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, or I want to make this rigid again, or I want to, suppress some mates or make some components fixed where I could possibly afford to. So that's one area, right? Mate and rebuild performance. Appearance counts is another area that we have in a demo. There's a component with a lot of appearances and overage of appearances that tells you not only why that can be detrimental to performance, but it also invites you to say, remove some of them, right?
Yeah,
so
or put the appearance on in a different way, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's a bunch of face appearances that are on there in this case to illustrate you've got some texture that's being used a bunch of times in one model that's now patterned a bunch of times.
It also makes the status bar a little bit more functional. So that bar at the very bottom, you might not even look at it ever. The bar at the very bottom of the screen inside of SOLIDWORKS Design, it's a bit of a notification tray at this point on the bottom right. So you'll see Performance Assistant, and you'll see a few icons. And if the icons have a little circle next to them, it's just like on your cell phone, essentially. Like you might want to check in, on that red dot and see like, okay, I have messages here. I might want to check in on what these are, and then decide if you want to take action. So yeah, it becomes a bit of a notification tray there in the status bar. But this, I think, is a great example of how the software is changing in ways that make everyday usage a lot easier and a lot more functional, and help SOLIDWORKS to sort of think with you in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like all of those a lot.
Cool. All right, so that does it for AI and assistance. We're going to head over to our next section, which is core SOLIDWORKS design improvements. So these are areas, as we start this section, these are areas where when we were looking at some of the enhancements, the story sort of popped out to us that these might seem like small changes, though I will say a lot of these were oft requested changes and improvements over years. Like if you Google some of these, you'll see, articles from or SOLIDWORKS forum posts from 2017, 2018, 2021 of people saying, hey, can I do this in SOLIDWORKS? And then of course on the back end, we're getting a lot of requests from you guys to implement this into the software. And you'll see these as potentially small additions, small changes in terms of click this button now and this button's now available, but they make big changes potentially to your workflow, and then downstream the things you're able to do. And a lot of them are in drawings, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these things are only small things if you don't need to do it, right? If it's one of those things that you need to do and you can't do, then it's a big thing. So it's maybe a small change as far as the software goes, but if it's something that you need and is now here and you didn't have to wait a year to get it, then wonderful.
All right, so let's get into the first one. So the solid spot for this one, note highlighting. Highlighters have been around since the 60s, and SOLIDWORKS Design just got its first one ever. New in SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 FD02, you can now highlight notes on your 2D drawings. So, easy to apply, just like a regular highlighter.
Yep.
You can see in the demo here, if you're watching on YouTube, that you basically highlight the note, highlight the text within the note. You don't have to highlight the entire note. You just highlight the text that you want to change. and then you can pick whichever color you want. You can go with the traditional yellow, which I believe is the default, or you can go with a red. Who can miss a red highlight, Jesse?
Who can miss it?
So multiple colors. You're not stuck with yellow. You can define a custom color. They are removable, so if you go back into the note, you can go ahead and click that no color checkbox to revert it back. And I like in this demo that they show that you can also apply them to the title block area.
Yeah, that is really neat. This is such a funny one because it's one of those things, like I just mentioned. If you don't use it, then it seems small. But I had no idea that we couldn't do this, nor had I even really thought about needing to do it. But then when I saw it, I was like, how has it gone this long that we couldn't? We have share and markup and all of these notes and tools for annotations, and I guess we couldn't do this. I admittedly don't do a lot of drawing work, so that would have probably become obvious to me at some point. I would have found that helpful, but I kind of chuckled to myself that, I guess we couldn't do that, but I could see myself using that frequently.
Yeah, this one, it was kind of strange. About a month ago, inside of the SOLIDWORKS Champion WhatsApp group, so SOLIDWORKS Champions Program WhatsApp group, someone was asking how to do this. They said, hey, my boss is looking for a way to do this, way to highlight text. I cannot for the life of me find anything about it.
Surely it's there.
Surely it's there. What am I missing? And I was so delighted to say, hey, look out for FD02. You don't always get to be able to say that, right? Sometimes you're like, hey, I think we should submit an enhancement request for that via your VAR.
Even if you knew it was coming, wait a year.
Yeah, or hey, look out this fall, right? Yep. But in this case, it was, hey, just wait maybe 2 weeks and then upgrade, which I was delighted to be able to say. Yeah. But yeah, so we mentioned title block eligible, mentioned the removable. One thing I wanted to mention though is that you can back save. If you are in subscription, you can back save your files to a previous version. So this is one of those cases where if you are sending a drawing file to someone who is using, and I've tested this, if you want to send it to someone who's using 2025, back save the drawing and its components to 2025 or 2024, because you can go to back. Mm-hmm. It will ask you to remove the highlight.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so because it is technically a new feature that doesn't appear inside of 2025 or 2024.
That makes sense.
So just something minor to call out.
Yeah.
Even though it seems like a small thing, it's just highlighting. If you are sharing files in that way, to look out for it.
Yeah, interesting. You'd have to send that some other way, either through share or PDF or something like that, I guess. But yeah, that makes sense. That's generally how the new features work and backsave works. So I guess that stands to reason. But tested that.
This is also somewhat subject to almost like a Mandela effect style phenomenon, I would say, because there are areas like if you think about draft site, the 2D CAD editor, edit and create DXFs and DWG files. There's highlighting available there.
Yep.
Think about SOLIDWORKS Composer for TechPub documentation. There's highlighting available there. SOLIDWORKS Inspection.
Yeah.
First article inspection. You can highlight there.
Definitely.
So it's like,
yeah.
Okay, so I've seen highlighting and SOLIDWORKS next to each other.
Yeah.
But not inside a drawing.
that could be very much what it is.
This is once again a nice one. It's a delighter, as we might say, but it helps quite a bit.
I'm delighted.
Cool.
And I don't even use it.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the next one here.
All right, sounds good. Rotating drawing tables. This one might even be in the same vein. I'm not sure. You've been rotating your 3D models for years, and now you can rotate your tables inside of SOLIDWORKS drawings. Nice little solid spot there, Sean. I'm not sure those two things are analogous. So Sean wrote these solid spots.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you like that one?
I'm not sure those two things are analogous, but they are both rotating.
Most of my episode prep was geared towards that specific solid spot, as you guys might guess. But yeah, this is another one. People have been asking about this for a long time, and I have some insights I'm really looking forward to sharing here. But you've seen, surely we've seen, I've gone to different customer sites and I've seen tons of different drawings where there is a vertical layout for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Right. Like for example, in this case, maybe it's because the geometry, just based on its kind of bounding box or what aspect ratio, it's just
weird.
Yeah, it's just it's maybe more suited towards maybe more of a sort of portrait style drawing. In which case if you have a bomb, for example, it's a little awkward to have it that way. You're kind of squishing the text, and it just doesn't really flow the way you'd want.
Yeah, because the other obvious thing to do, right, would be to turn the whole sheet, but then you've got to rotate everything. Your title block and everything's got to be the other way, and then all your geometry is the other way. Then all your balloons are sideways when you turn the page to physically read it.
It just doesn't work well.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's not ideal. So again, another one that I don't do a lot of drawing, so I hadn't even really thought about, but I could see why people would need this.
It's pretty simple to do, as it should be. You essentially select the table, and then there's a rotation option. It rotates in 90-degree increments, so you can always kind of keep clicking it to rotate it back, even if you just wanted to experiment with it. I also wanted to mention it's not just bill of materials. Like we mentioned bill of materials. Bill of materials are predominantly shown in the demo, but I think we also inserted a revision table up on the top, so you can do revision tables, whole tables, bill of materials tables. Tables galore. Just you can rotate whatever you want.
Rotate them all.
Yeah. So that is available. But
yeah, and then the demo kind of shows working with different anchor points.
The anchor point implementation
moving
is smart.
The anchor point so that you can still dock it the way that you would want it, even once it gets rotated. So that was nicely thought through.
Another thing that the demo shows is the addition of PLM attributes. So we added a whole host of those if you're using cloud services for SOLIDWORKS, which if you bought SOLIDWORKS, I think back in like July 2023 onward, you have cloud services. You just have to activate it, and you can manage your sort of multi-user projects using cloud services essentially from anywhere.
Yeah, I mentioned share and markup and things like that would be associated with that functionality.
And this here, PLM attributes, you can show maturity state, you can show revision inside of bill of materials. So for these types of drawings, maybe you were limited in these senses in terms of the columns that you wanted to show, by the amount of real estate that you thought you had or that you initially had pre FD02. Yeah. So this is also a nice opportunity beyond just the ability to, rotate a thing 90 degrees. It's also a nice opportunity to introduce the possibility that you could add additional columns to a bill of materials.
Whatever. And we talked about that last episode, right? FD01, those became kind of native in SOLIDWORKS, where before you had to manually link those. So even easier to use and slap in there, and now you've got more real estate to put them.
Cool. So if you're using FD02, enjoy. It just came out a few days ago, but if you're not, all the more reason to upgrade, right?
Exactly right.
Okay, let's get to the next one.
Let's do it.
Okay, so this one, favorite drawing symbols. Solid spot here is SOLIDWORKS has an expansive symbols library. That's all well and great, but what if you continuously find yourself aiming to access the same 3 or 4 symbols for your engineering drawings? In 2026 FD02, that problem is now solved with the favorite symbols folder. So another delighter that if you're adding symbols frequently for geometric tolerancing, inspection, you have a few there that you're just using a lot very often. You're not having to go back into the symbol library, accessing them the same way. You have a favorites folder that's right up at the top of the categories list, which is convenient.
Very convenient. Favorites, I find in general, are underutilized because it will save you a lot of time in general, not just for symbols like this, but I was just talking about this with Visualize too. It's so nice to be able to sort through mass amounts of things quickly that you use on a daily basis. We talk about customizing the SOLIDWORKS interface a lot and tuning it. Like SOLIDWORKS is very customizable to be able to tune to what you do on a daily basis. Favorites are a great way to do that. That we have the favorites in the tree. I never see anybody doing that.
Oh yeah,
right?
I always forget about that.
Yeah, I'll go in and favorite a mate or something like that. We talk about sorting through a large assembly. A great way to do that is if you've got something that you're going to be coming back to, just favorite that guy and it'll go right to the top of your tree. This is another case where it's perfect. You've got a nuisance of a list of things to sort through that, unless you happen to be right at the top of the things that you need on a daily basis, take the 2 seconds it takes to make them a favorite for yourself, and then you can not have to go sifting through a bunch of things ever again.
Once again, a simple implementation as well. Yep. Add to favorites, remove from favorites as well. If you do, add a favorite by accident or you just don't need it for a project anymore. So very easy to access. Check out the demo if you're listening on Spotify. And this is yet another one that's a very simple feature, but can speed you up quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I like those things that take 2 seconds to do, and then they just keep paying for themselves every day you use it.
Cool.
Love
All
it.
right, let's head to the next one.
All right, we have refined isolated display. Let's hit the solid spot for that. So the isolate command has received a major facelift. Beginning in SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 FD02, you can now refine which components are isolated for view inside of your assembly viewport by isolating from within an existing isolated view. That's a lot of isolation.
Yeah, it's a lot of isolation. I guess we should probably talk about what isolate is. Because I would guess that a lot of people don't know what the isolate command is.
Yeah, sure. Good point. So isolate would be a quick way graphically to filter your way down, right? It's a graphical filtering tool, essentially, that will let you dig down into your assembly and see only the components that you need to see, which is a massive benefit of modeling in CAD, right? You can take 1,000 components and say, I want to see these 6 and zoom yourself in. That is not new.
Yeah.
That part has been around for as long as I've been
A
alive.
long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is not new. However, we can now refine that from within an isolation, which I have definitely wanted to do before. You isolate a bunch of things and then think, I want to use the same isolate to take out some more things, right? Or make this slightly different in a way that I can see some different number of components. And we can now do that directly without having to get rid of the isolate and then redo the whole thing and try to get back to the ones that we just needed.
Yeah, that process was always clunky.
A little bit.
In terms of using select other, like hiding things and then going in, isolating, and then saving a display state from that. Which is like stuff you could do, but it was really tough and to some extent.
Yeah, just needlessly complex, right?
Yeah. So you can save multiple display states out as you refine your isolate state.
Do love that functionality.
Yeah. And then also I wanted to mention within isolate, a lot of people probably miss that you can change the way that components that are not shown are maybe shown, but maybe not in their, fullest extent, their fullest opacity, right? So when I believe the default when you use isolate is that the components that you have not selected are just hidden. So they're not shown in view. So you can isolate just the components that you want to see. But you can also show those components that are not selected in a more of a sort of partially transparent look.
Okay.
So that's a possibility, but you could also show them in wireframe as well through the isolate dialog. So all those things, as you mentioned, Jesse, isolate is not new. The ability to save display states is not new. The functionality I just mentioned also not new. But what is new is the ability to continuously refine your isolations and continue to save display states from the isolation, which in multi-layered assemblies where a lot of components on top of each other, in that sense, this could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, very nice. One of the things I like to do with isolate is go to view mates and you can isolate so you can basically see what's connected to what.
Yeah.
So if you've got a component that you're trying to troubleshoot or something like that, you can take a look at the mates and then you can isolate from that group of components that are all somehow related to each other. But sometimes you get more things than you need or whatever, so you can isolate from there, start at that starting point, and then make some tweaks. It just gives you a lot more flexibility when you're using the isolate command.
Cool. All right, let's head to the next one here.
Let's do it.
So this one is titled Section Modulus. Solid spot is working with beams or structural shapes. SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 FD02 makes it easier than ever to investigate stresses along these shapes by offering section modulus calculations. So essentially this is a tell. The section modulus is a tell for bending stresses. So it tells you how well a cross section may resist bending. So some of this is also an area where we're showcasing a pane inside of SOLIDWORKS that is not new. The ready-made section modulus calculation, the software giving you that calculation, that is new. However, the section properties pane under evaluate and assemblies is not new. So things that it gives you there, you can evaluate distance across a certain section, and you can do faces, you can do sketches, distance from origin, moments of inertia, calculate angles, angularity in a certain neighborhood or certain area. So you can evaluate different sections, a set of faces, a set of sketches that are on parallel planes from one another. So that is not new, but the ability to do section modulus calculation is new.
Yeah, beam calculator, as you see in the demo, if you're watching on screen, also not new, but a convenient way to use those.
Probably new to a lot of people.
Maybe new to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But an ancient tool in software terms has been around. But yeah, no, very cool that you can just access that directly. I suspect that there's a lot of a lot of people who have preset beam calculations, hand calcs, that is very convenient to grab a beam and just run it into the system that you already have in place for quick calculations on those types of things, to know whether or not that profile is going to work for the application. You've got all of that information kind of baked into the knowledge that you guys have as a company, and you can just extract that really quick and make a quick call, particularly on profiles that are kind of wacky, strange 80-20 profiles and things like that.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, beams, any type of structural member, and the calculation that's happening inside of the beam calculator, it isn't like FEA, it isn't doing any sort of meshing. It's essentially a calculator. Like you might draw up in like Visual Basic or something with a few form fields. It has some calculating going on in the background. It's very easy. It responds just as quickly as you would on like a regular calculator, right? So you pick the type of calculation, you do a stress test, multiple different types of load types. So in the demo that we're seeing here, we do an unsymmetrical load along the beam using the section modulus that's calculated between the faces at the very ends.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned that SOLIDWORKS simulation does have beam elements built into it that will auto-convert. So they are very fast. So if you've got a system of any kind of complexity, that's a great way to go, right? Just convert it over. But this would be used, in cases where you already have a pre-existing, hand calc style set of, system already set up that you can reference, and now you can just quickly extract that information and plug it in.
Great point. So this is one way that the software is newly expressing itself, right, Jesse?
Yes.
Another one that you're really excited about is volume rendering.
The one that I'm mostly excited about.
With SOLIDWORKS Visualize. Tell us about it.
I would love to, Sean. Let's hit our solid spot for this one. What if you could finally render light itself in SOLIDWORKS Visualize? Up until now, effects like fog or smoke are invisible light rays. You had to fake them, yes, or add them in later in post. However, beginning 2026 FD02, you can now introduce volumetric effects directly into your scene. Yes, and yes, you can. Very excited about this. So volumetrics, if you're watching along, super easy to add in. Just right click, add a volume, just like adding in any other primitive, except that it's not solid. So then you can go in and adjust the density. Now for this release, we have just a continuous homogeneous density. So you can just use the slider to make that adjustment to how dense you want the volume to be. But you'll see what happens is once you do that, any lights that you have shining through that will give you that really cool ray effect of kind of showing off where that light is in space. Obviously, Visualize is solving for the light rays that actually come out of any lights or lighting elements that you have set up, and any of those that hit the model or whatever, those impacts will be seen, but you can't necessarily see the light ray itself. And in real life, we always have something floating through the air, some kind of particulate. The more of that you get, the more of that's going to catch the light as it shines through. So that's essentially what you're doing. You're putting a haze or a mist in the air that is catching those lights as they go. I'm pretty excited about this. We have some more enhancements to this that are coming soon that I'm even more excited about. But yeah, this is a really cool way. We have so the final image that you're seeing in this case, I did with a combination of a few things. So I have IES profiles set up in the lights, so you're getting kind of a more specific light ray that's showing there. I have the bloom filter turned on, which is getting a tiny bit of haze around the perimeter of the lights as well. So it's a bit of a combination of effects, but yeah, those cool rays that you see shooting out through the scene were not possible to do in render before, so pretty thrilled about it.
Should mention too, I mean, if you aren't using SOLIDWORKS Visualize today, right? It's available. What are you doing, first of all? But no, if you have SOLIDWORKS Design Professional, Premium. Right.
So Visualize is in a couple levels. So you have Standard, which will get you the ability to create still frames.
So you're saying SOLIDWORKS Visualize Standard.
SOLIDWORKS Visualize Standard, yep. Will come with those packages that you just mentioned. But if you're using the 3D Experience version of SOLIDWORKS, you will get what is essentially the equivalent of Visualize Professional as well. So a nice little perk, at least as the packages currently stand, that if you are using the 3D Experience version, you get a little extra juice under the hood in your Visualize license, which is cool.
Which might, inside of SOLIDWORKS Design, probably looks the same, right? You have SOLIDWORKS Design in the corner, but it's more of a named user style licensing, right?
Yeah, great point. The 3D Experience SOLIDWORKS is just a different way to install.
Awesome.
And manage. Yep.
Yeah, you were. I was very excited to have this in the episode, and I know you were very excited about this particular feature. So I'm glad
I've been waiting for this one.
Glad we covered it. So let's move on to our next section, multi-user enhancements. So I mentioned at the top, these are enhancements that probably are more applicable if you are in a multi-user environment, whether you're collaborating with others outside of your organization or you just have a multi-person design or engineering team. These might be more applicable to you. So let's get into it. First feature that we're going to discuss today is Content Explorer integration. So I'll hit you with the solid spot to start us off. In 2026, FD01, released several weeks ago, we introduced the Content Explorer, arguably the most efficient means ever of finding, accessing, and managing SOLIDWORKS files in a multi-user environment directly from a web browser. Today, that same experience is at your fingertips, directly inside of SOLIDWORKS Design. That's right, you don't have to leave the app. So this will feel like anyone who's been using Windows, the Windows operating system, Windows File Explorer, this will seem pretty familiar, I think.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say it combines sort of the best attributes of an engineering file management system, a product lifecycle system with what it feels like to use Windows Explorer. So essentially what it's doing is it's taking our bookmarking system, which is still available inside of 3D Experience. If you're using cloud services for SOLIDWORKS, this is really the tech backbone of what you're using to access and manage your files from the cloud inside of your desktop SOLIDWORKS. And it's giving you many different attributes for starters, right? It's giving you access to maturity state right there. It's giving you access to revision, who the project is locked by, giving you, of course, just like Windows would, a thumbnail of the files. Of course, the file name is all right there, all explorable through a very familiar interface. So that's for starters, what it's doing for you.
Yeah, maybe if I could back up even further than the starters. So I just mentioned that with Visualize, you get an upgraded version of Visualize with the 3D Experience. This is obviously 3D Experience functionality, right? This is part of the platform. But you just mentioned desktop as well, right? So you do have access to these on desktop. You mentioned it earlier. If you've purchased SOLIDWORKS past July of 2023, is that what?
Many people, there's also like a nominal sort of upgrade fee.
Yes, or if you
wanted to access cloud services.
Yeah, if your subscription is on the current version, you can do that as well. It would just you need to install this portion of it, right? Where if you have SOLIDWORKS, that's the 3D Experience version.
Right. Essentially, it functions as like an add-in.
That's right. If you have SOLIDWORKS, that's the 3D Experience version. That is the named user, as you just mentioned. Then it's just already pre-built in. But both versions, you can use things like this and share and markup and all of those functionalities that we were talking about. So you don't need 3D Experience SOLIDWORKS to get access to things like this. You just need to be in the current version of subscription and install it if you're on a serial number version.
And we essentially built this new interface, this Content Explorer interface from the ground up.
Yeah.
Like for SOLIDWORKS users. We wanted to make it a lot easier and a lot more native feeling to be able to explore across your projects. Like I mentioned, we had bookmark functionality, which you can kind of configure to work like folders, but didn't work exactly like folders.
Yeah, and we took a lot of abuse for recreating a folder system. Maybe some of it rightly so, I don't know, but I think when I first started using the platform, I had the same reaction. Why in the world did we do this? Like, folders worked fine. Why did we go and make something that is sort of like it, but not quite? But I will say I have come to really, really like bookmarks, bookmark folders, as they're now referred to. So this combination is the sweet spot, and I'm really excited about the Explorer for that reason, because you can now navigate them just like you would always navigate anything, but you still get the advantages of having bookmarks. Namely, what I mean by that is that the file itself is not in the folder, right? When you're in Windows,
it's like a tag.
Yeah, it's just a tag. It's like it's a bookmark to where the file is stored. So the way the platform works, if we could take a quick meandering trip here, the files themselves are on your in your space, right? You could think of it like your digital hard drive, and then your folders just know where to look to find the file. So you don't have those issues where I've got this file here, and if I want to put it in another folder, I have to copy or duplicate that file to put it over here and over here and over here. You can reference those all over the place. So you've got a lot of flexibility in that the folders just know where to find the information, which is something that I really like. I am not good about file organization, and I will say that bookmark folders really help me in that regard.
The initial idea, I think part of the initial idea as well, in addition to everything you mentioned, is that you could use search functionality. There are so many different criteria using 3D Experience where you can search for different items based on owner, based on description, and almost any property you can think of. Any combination of those properties to kind of find what you need, part number. So there are a lot of ways to do that. I think one area that is somewhat related to the next sort of feature that we'll discuss here that I find really interesting and nifty is even like this interface we're looking at here, the duplicate interface, where you can specify, components for reuse or duplication when you're looking to sort of take an existing project and kind of work from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. It isn't just a skin on something that was already existing. They actually put some novel functionality in with this Explorer, and obviously this is just the first crack at it. So I'm excited to see what will come. It's already pretty pervasive in the software, though. We can, if you're watching the demo, you can see it in the My Session area, but you also see it in the open dialogues. They've already kind of built it in a lot of places where you would expect to find it, which is very nice.
Yeah, and like you mentioned in the demo, you essentially have to, at a settings level, turn it on as far as like a native navigation style interface. But yeah, once you do that, you can test it out and let us know in the comments if you're trying it and how you like it.
And I would say go ahead and do that, because I don't really see a downside yet to turning that on.
I don't either. I'm not sure. I mean, unless you just love how things are, then keep them the way they are, I would say, almost with all things. But you can always toggle back, even if that is the case.
Exactly right.
Cool. All right, so let's head to the next one.
Yeah. Next up on our list, we've got a solid spot for Pack and Go. Who saw that coming?
Yeah.
Sending files via Pack and Go. Well, if you're using SOLIDWORKS Plastics, you can now package your files with your plastic simulation results. All right, so now this one might also be a Mandela one. Like, couldn't you do that before? Well, simulation results, you could. Plastics,
yes.
Not so much.
Not so much. Yeah, that's the big change, and I think it's useful to revisit what's available inside of Pack and Go as well. I think a lot of I've witnessed this happen with a lot of different SOLIDWORKS users. They'll go to Pack and Go and they'll see all the different checkboxes for what you can include, and some of them they remember, some of them they don't, some of them they've never seen before. And it could be a real light bulb moment. So you mentioned, Jesse, including simulation results, like FEA results. That's not new. What's new is if you are using SOLIDWORKS Plastics and you're, let's say, doing like a fill time analysis, like we show here, that you can actually package those and bring those along with a package of the assembly files or the part file, and you can send it to someone else to be able to view the study results with the entire packet, essentially. So that's the part that's new. But again, looking across the entire interface, there's a lot there, right?
Yeah.
To include drawings, include custom decals, to save to a previous version of SOLIDWORKS.
I was just going to say, yeah, we've mentioned that in a previous episode too.
Yep. So you can back save up to, if you're on subscription, you can back save up to 2 releases back. So you can take the drawing, the parts, the assemblies, whatever's associated with the file that way within Pack and Go.
Yeah, and this is another one that, as far as maybe announcements, is a small one, but it's one of those things that, obviously plastics users have been looking for this for quite some time. But it's one of those things that if you are not a plastic user, or you're a future plastics user, when you go to look for the option, it's going to be there, right? There are just those things that, we just have to keep adding and keep developing and keep putting in there so that when you go to use it, the option's there. It's got to come in at some point, and that point is now.
Yep. Cool. So that about does it. Those are already enhancements for FD02. I think we have almost, a bit for everyone in that sense, right?
Yeah.
The everyday SOLIDWORKS users, enhancements to core functionality.
We got Visualize in there, which I'm thrilled about.
Visualize is in there. Some interesting enhancements and the sort of AI or assistant level functionality. So if you are interested in using FD02, we encourage you to go ahead and upgrade. Maybe give a tap on the shoulder to your department lead or one of your coworkers and say, hey, there's this Node highlighting. We've been looking for, just like that SOLIDWORKS champion said. We've been looking for it, even if it's some small reason.
Yeah.
But of course, we always have performance upgrades and boosts inside of each functional delivery, or as you might think of them, FDs. But I also wanted to mention, Jesse, these are our favorites. Like these are 10 or 11 of our favorites from Functional Delivery 2 of 2026. You can check out the What's New documentation to see even more of what's new inside the FD02 release. But you can also go to solidworks.com/delivery. We have some highlights there. We have a full summary video that our colleague Noah Zeef is producing. So you can see that summary video for an easy sort of 8-minute or so breakdown of the new features and functionality. But overall, encourage you to try out FD02.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for watching the show. Obviously, if you're tapping one of your coworkers on the shoulder, mention that they should watch the show as well, because they missed the information that they needed to get. Obviously, we're filming this, but we'll be in the chat as we always are as this goes live, answering questions. So if you have any suggestions, hopefully this is helpful to you. But if you have any suggestions for how we can make this more helpful to you as these FDs come out, let us know in the chat as well, and we can try to incorporate those changes. Sean, it's been lovely to see you again in this studio.
Yes. Once again, thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time for FD03. Take care.